Hey everyone, welcome to Back to Basics, a Magic the Gathering Commander podcast. I'm Austin, and I'm joined today by an Alex.
Hello.
A Jason.
Hello.
And a Kalen.
What's up?
I always end it on you. It's so much better when I do. Anyway, like I said,
What's
we're Back to
good?
Basics, a Commander podcast, and we're going to kick it off with the best card you're not playing. And today, up today for the best card you're not playing is me. And I'm here to talk about a little ditty called Dissipation Field. So, Dissipation Field is a 2/2 enchantment that says whenever a permanent deals damage to you, return it to its owner's hand. So, the reason I'm talking about this card is that it's, first off, this card is not played like anywhere. I don't see it at all. And I think this card is actually nuts. So, one of the best thing about this card, it's very similar to No Mercy, the black enchantment that does similar things. You know, when creatures hit you, it destroys them. It's a very similar thing to that, although you're in blue instead of in black. It's a good protection element, so things like Propaganda, Ghostly Prison, those Pillow 40 style cards, this does the same thing. But something that we actually noticed, or we kind of like remembered at least, last night we were playing on Spell Table, is that it says whenever a permanent deals damage to you, that doesn't have to be combat damage, and it doesn't have to be a creature. So, Alex was actually playing, what's the name of that? He was playing a 5-color cycling deck.
And I had a Braylon in play.
A Braylon, which deals damage whenever he discards a card. And so the first time he dealt damage, Dissipation Field triggered and bounced it to his hand. Another thing you can do with this that I actually realized last night as well is that if you don't have any lands in your hand and you want to make an extra land drop, if you tap a pain land for color, it deals a damage to you, it gets bounced because it's any permanent, not just ones that your opponents control, and then you can play it as a land for turn and effectively like play your land for the turn and get the extra mana out of it that you want to, which I think is really, really interesting as well. It's just a really, really powerful enchantment. It is only 4 mana, which is a really solid thing. The artwork is nuts. Like, there are a lot of things about this card.
The flavor text is great.
Yeah,
love it.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's only played in 1% of eligible decks on EDH, right?
Yeah,
it's very
lightly played, and it's honestly it's a great control card because it's going to protect you when the one thing that control likes to do, especially in Commander, is you want to make sure that you can kind of like prevent people from just like slowly chipping away at you, because that's how they're going to kill you. Like, that's how you kill a control deck in Commander, is you like 3 damage here, 4 damage there, and then after 5 or 6 turns of just like a bunch of damage, they're sitting at like 10 life, and they're like, God, I need to not die right now. And that's just,
it's really hard to justify. It's really hard to justify a board wipe when they're only hitting you for 2 a turn or something like that, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
it's a really good way to
play into the wrath. Yeah, that's like a big thing. And then, well, like this card specifically, obviously it lets your opponents play around a wrath by like swinging into you or whatever. But like it also makes it so they have to attack every other turn if they're doing it. And then again, things like Braylon or Rurik Thar is a really good one. Just like anything that deals damage to you whenever something happens, even like Sulfuric Vortex. Like if someone plays a Sulfuric Vortex and then it deals damage to you, that as soon as that happens, it goes back to their hands. They have to recast it, and you can like gain your life or whatever when it's not in play anymore. Like there's a lot of stuff.
It's also just a huge mana advantage because they're constantly having to replay these sources.
This
You're
card.
just getting,
and
it also gives you a chance you're in blue. At least with this one, you're at least in blue, so there's a chance that you have counter spells up, so you can potentially
counter the spell as it comes back down.
The Rurik Thar, as you were saying, or something else like that. Yeah, this is a really great if we're like a pillow fort, want to buckle down.
Absolutely.
The only types of decks that this card's not really great against is like the value flicker decks, because like they attack you with their Soul and Simulacrum and put it back in their hand and replay it.
They like that.
They like their ETB effects. Yeah, that's true.
That's fair.
You
can always put a Torpor Orb if you're going a stacks route. I mean, if you're going Pillow Fort too, like combine this with Propaganda, so they have to pay like the mana to attack you,
and then they have to recast,
and then they
spell.
bounce it, and then they have to recast it. I mean, if you're paying 7 mana to get an extra land drop off your solemn Simulacrum, whatever, your boy,
your sad robot.
Your sad robot. Then that's perfectly fine with me, right?
Yeah,
7 mana to get another.
You were saying
land drop.
too, just like the fact that if anyone deals damage, and obviously in Commander with multiplayer and stuff, this is a big deal. It's like the mana advantage that cards usually bring in. But like this card does that as well. Like you pay 4 mana for this enchantment, this is very unassuming. Not a lot of people are going to sit there and be like, "Well, I need to Corrosion Grip that card, right?" Or like, "That needs to die." It's usually one of those cards that like gets hit maybe second or third on the list versus like the first one that like need to kill enchantment.
Yeah.
And it's going to provide a big mana advantage over the course of the game because anyone that attacks you, has to deal any damage that they deal gets bounced back to their hands. They recast their spells. You're sitting there. You can be up on mana very, very easily from the smallest thing, right? And that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. So
I think last point, like we were talking about Rurik Thar, but like it really ticks down on those anti-control cards like Rurik Thar, like Eidolon, those type of Eidolon of the Revel, anything that works like that, where it pings you for casting spells, and it's really good to like ping down control players. This is great because it's like, nope, goes back to your hand. Like
exactly,
it's perfect.
Yeah,
I love this. This is a great card. Great choice.
I would like to make a point about what commander this card's really great with. Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, it's really good with any of the cards, any of the commanders that want to know your opponent's hand. Oh yeah,
for anyone that doesn't know what Nebuchadnezzar is, since it's kind of an obscure card from Legends.
Oh god,
it's 3 blue-black for a 3/3. I believe it's a human wizard.
It is human wizard. It's human wizard.
X tap. Name a card. Target opponent reveals X cards from his or her hand at random. If that player does not have enough cards in his hand, he or she reveals his entire hand. Then they discard any cards that match the name card. Use this ability only once during your turn.
Yeah, it's oh boy.
It's like one of the
5-mana 3/3s from Legends.
No,
it's actually one of the better ones. It actually does something.
The best card with this is Warped Devotion. So it's another enchantment. It's I believe it's 2 and a black. But it says whenever a card is returned to an opponent's hand from the battlefield, like a permanent card, they discard a card. So they like hit you with this creature that bounces back to their hand, then they have to immediately discard a card. And if they have no cards in hand, they just discard the card that hit you. Like, I did this with Dromar. I built Dromar for a while, and it was just a lot of like bouncing stuff back to their owner's hands, and then like playing Warp Devotion and like Geth's Grimoire and making people discard cards and taking damage from it. And it was not nice. It was a Homestead deck though, which is kind of fun. So just a very budget deck.
That's pretty cool. It's a great like bounce kind of like that's definitely Demir.
It was cool.
Can do some sort of bounce deck or something like that. That's really
it was cool.
Really cool. Yeah.
Anyway, that's Dissipation Field. Does anyone else have another point they want to make on it?
No.
Okay, yeah,
I really don't.
It's a cool card. But we don't need to talk about it forever. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our main topic then. And I'm not gonna go first because wow, I've just done a bunch of talking, but. We're going to do a bit of not really like an introductory episode, but kind of what we wanted to do is kind of sit down and each of us chose like our main, our babies, our one pet deck or whatever that we really, really love. And we're going to talk about it and just kind of go into the intricacies of how it works and what makes it up and all that type of stuff. So whoever wants to go first is more than welcome to. I know that 3 of us have some really big
I'll
chunks.
First.
So
I'll go first.
Yeah, why don't we have the one that's different?
Mine's the odd one out, so I'll go first.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
In more ways than one.
Sure.
So the deck that I'm talking about is Goreclaw, Terror of Kalstisma, which is a deck that kind of came out because of 2 different reasons. One was it was inspired by the Canadian Highlander medium green deck, and just that aspect of playing all these really weird 4 to 6 mana green creatures that you don't see anywhere because they're really awkward to cast and don't always do enough.
Hold on, class. Say it with me, kids. Ancient Tomb.
Well, that's a good segue because Ancient Tomb's one of the cards I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Goreclaw is 3 and a green for a 4/3 legendary bear that says creature spells I cast that have power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. And when she attacks, all attacking creatures I control, the power 4 or greater get +1/+1 and trample until the turn. So you're just playing these big, dumb idiots that don't need to have trample, and you give them trample, and people just die. I was saying earlier, the deck was inspired by medium green, and also there was a few people in our commander play group that said you can't play commander or aggro and commander. Period. And I wanted to prove them wrong.
And you
The
did.
deck plays
Yeah.
some extremely. It plays a lot of extremely fast mana that you see a lot in high power magic or high power commander like Mana Crypt, Soul Ring are two big ones. It also plays Ancient Tomb. It plays Jeweled Lotus. It plays Chrome Mox and Mox Diamond. And that's just because you're essentially just trying to race to 4 mana as fast as humanly possible. Doesn't matter how you get there. You're not playing the normal green ramp like Rampant Growth effects or Kodama's Reach. There's no need to play them.
No,
And
you
just
got
a deck like
that.
this?
You also have Ronus's Monument. It reduces the cost of
Yeah.
green creature spells by 1, which is actually pretty relevant when you're slamming down a couple in a turn. This is a great deck. Also, real quick, listeners, we will be posting all these decks in the link description. So
Yes,
if you want to,
if you want to build these decks or comment about how one of the card choices that we've made is wrong, I'm gonna let you know right now.
I'm not gonna
chances are
listen.
Chances are pretty high we're not
no.
gonna listen because we've
I'll type a
probably
paragraph
tried
about why
it.
you're wrong.
So yeah,
well, I mean,
like,
it
give
depends on the meta you're
explanation.
in too.
Yeah.
But yeah, we will be posting these deck lists. So if you want to read along with them, or if you want to look and see exactly what we're talking about, because we're not going to go over every single card in every single deck.
There are
so yeah,
4 creatures I want to talk about for Goreclaw, though, that kind of give a pretty good idea of what the deck's trying to do and the types of creatures you want to play, what you want your creatures to be able to do. And the first one I want to talk about is Thunderfoot Baloth, which is 4 green for a 5/5 beast with trample. And it has the Lieutenant keyword, which says as long as you control your commander, Thunderfoot Baloth and all of your other creatures get +2/+2 in trample.
I have nightmares about this card.
I do too.
Thunderfoot
I
Baloth
hate
is
this
good
card. I hate this card so much.
It's just a very powerful card. It pairs really well with the next creature I want to talk about, which shows how this deck isn't really a mono green deck. It's also playing actual colorless spells that have colorless pips attached to them. So you're more or less a green deck splashing colorless.
Blight
And then-
Queen.
Yeah, the second creature I want to talk about is Deceiver Reform, which is 6 and a colorless for an 8/8 Eldrazi.
You're
It says at
welcome.
the beginning of beginning of combat in your turn, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you may have all of your other creatures become a copy of it until end of turn, and then you scry 1. Essentially, you can scry that card to the top or bottom. And what this card does is it acts as a Crater Hoof because this deck doesn't play Hoof at all. It's not trying to go super wide. It's trying to land like 2 to 3 creatures and kill your opponents with those 3 creatures. To not overextend into a Wrath like we were talking about earlier.
it goes big, not wide. But
Yeah, it goes very
real
tall.
big.
yeah, it goes really
Um,
big.
And then it plays a small mutate package with Auspicious Sterix and Gem Razor, which are the only 2 you need in mono green. Auspicious Sterix is 4 and a green for a 6/6 Elk Beast, everyone's favorite creature type, Elk.
Oh yeah.
With mutate for 5 and a 6. And when the creature mutates, you exile until you hit X permanents, where X is the number of times it's been mutated, and you put all the permanents into play. So this card this is the type of card advantage you want. You don't want to necessarily draw a bunch of cards. You just want to be able to put permanents into play. It doesn't matter if they're creatures, dorky enchantments, not really dorky enchantments, but enchantments like a Sylvan Library or Concordant Crossroads.
Dorky.
Dorky.
Dork.
Concordant Crossroads. Dorky.
Yeah, it is. Austin did not care for that card last night.
I was not okay with it.
It's a strong magic card.
I still want
And
it
then
somehow.
the last creature that I want to talk about for this part of it is just to show the type of finisher that you want to be playing like over Crater Hoof. I think this card's a lot better than Hoof in this type of deck. And it's God Eternal Ronas.
Oh yeah.
It's 3 green for a 5/5 zombie god with Death Touch. And when it enters the battlefield, it doubles the power of all of your other creatures and gives them Vigilance until end of turn. And then when it has the God Eternal text where it dies, it goes back. And the best thing to do with this card is if you have so you play it and you have Evolutionary Leap out, you can sacrifice it, and if there's no other creatures, you just get it back and you can cast it again. or you can play it at Evolutionary Leap, sacrifice this, shuffle it back, or put it back, and then get it again.
That's hot. I love it.
Yeah.
It's like just doubling the power of all your creatures twice, like even 1 to 2 times is enough to probably kill at least 2 people at the table.
Especially because your commander gives trample. So, like,
Yeah.
you get the ability to go over them really, really quickly.
Basically Craterhoof Behemoth, but better in this
Yeah.
deck.
Gross.
You can play Hoof in this deck if you want to, but you're not going to get like the plus 20 you get in like an Elf Ball style deck or like a Merfolk deck where you're swarming the field.
Yeah, a lot of the time you, like a very large number of the times that I've seen you play this deck, and like I've seen you obviously play, I think everyone has seen the decks that we're talking about played quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever seen you with more than maybe like 4 creatures in play. Like,
no,
I think that's usually where you kind of max out.
Sterix mutate package, and I flipped a bunch of creatures.
Yeah, that's like the only thing I could think of.
Yeah. And then there is a little bit of removal in this deck because sometimes you have to clear the way of creatures or a propaganda or an ensnaring bridge. And the best way to do that is just to play a Song of the Dryads, turn it into a forest, and you don't have to worry about it ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And then for random a creature that this deck actually struggles a lot against are the Mother of Runes types creatures.
Yeah.
That just get protection from green. And the way I have to deal with, or the best way to deal with it in this type of deck is Walking Ballista, which is XX for a 0/0 construct. And as you can see, Austin is loving this.
My Mother of Runes died really fast last night, and I'm not okay with it, okay?
They got
It
Walking
enters with X
Ballista.
counters, and has an activability for 4 mana. You can put an extra counter on it. That really doesn't happen a whole lot, but you can remove a counter to deal 1 damage. This acts as both a finisher, a way to police planeswalkers if you need to, or it can deal with... Sometimes if you... if someone goes land dork, and you're second... sometimes a really good line is just go Ancient Tomb Ballista, kill your dork.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this in the removal episode too, where Jason brought up the Walking Ballista. Like, it's very relevant. It's a good removal spell that a lot of people can play, and it's also a creature in your deck, which is very relevant.
Yeah.
So
If you have you don't have an infinite mana dump, but it is an infinite mana dump. I just love Walking Ballista as a card. I know some people have very strong opinions about this card, but from like a true like just usefulness perspective, it's a very good card.
Yeah. If you want to play a heavier mutate package in this deck, and you can put a Glowstone Recluse in the deck, which says when it mutates, you put 2/1 counters on it. And you just mutate over the Walking Ballista constantly.
Yeah.
You also have Umezawa's Jite to deal with.
Yeah, you also have Jite, which is I think it's actually a little underplayed in Commander. I don't know if I would put it under the card.
Moving on to the next category of card I want to talk about. There's a small equipment package in the deck. With 0 ways to tutor them. And just the best equipment in the deck is Umezawa's Jite, which is another way that I can deal with Mother of Runes.
Okay, yeah.
Tell me, Austin.
Stop it.
How many Mother Ruins has he killed?
Well, no, it was great, because he played Mother Runes, and I said, man, this is going to be a real problematic. And then went Walking Ballista into Umezawa's Jite.
Oh my god.
I don't want to talk about it.
Umezawa's Jite, if you guys don't know, it's one of my favorite cards in Magic.
It is one of the strongest Magic cards printed since.
It's 2 mana, legendary artifact equipment. When a equipped creature deals combat damage, put 2 charge counters on Jite. You can remove a counter to give an equipped creature +2/+2 till end of turn, or target creature gets -1/-1 till end of turn, or you gain 2 life. And it's got a equip cost of 2. What I love most about this card is that the removing the counters to give -1/-1 or to gain 2 life are things that you don't have to have equipped in order to do.
Oh, it just sits there.
It just sits there.
Frequently stated that a lot of people talk about how Soul Ring should be in the power 9 and you should take Time Twister out. And then a lot of people have talked about how like Jace the Mind Sculptor is like the power 10 card. I think Jite could firmly replace Time Twister as well. Like, that's how good I think this card is. This card's so stupid.
There's a few cards.
Why do you get counters on both attacking and blocking? Why can you use it when it's not equipped to a creature? Why does it give +2/+2? Why does it do everything? I don't understand.
It's really good when I put
Don't
it
worry,
on
we'll
a
talk
creature
more
with
about
vigilance
cards that I
and
think should be
reach.
in the Power 9 over Time Twister.
Yeah,
in
that's
just
gonna
a
be a
second.
whole episode.
And then another thing with the equipment package I want to talk about is the swords that I'm playing. I'm playing 3 swords. I'm playing Sinew and Steel, Truth and Justice, and War and Peace. And the entire reason that these are the swords that I decided to play over some of the more powerful ones like Fire and Ice, Feast and Famine is the not necessarily the abilities that they give, but the protection that they give.
Yeah.
This deck wants a lot of ways to protect from spot removal, and black red, blue white, and white red are the most relevant 2-color pairings that you have to worry about as a green player. Also, I don't play either of the green swords in this deck because I want to be able to target my creatures with my own spells, and giving them protection from green is actively a bad thing to do.
I have seen a lot of people punt that. They're like, I'm gonna cast this spell targeting like they have like I think there's I don't know what it was, but there's like a video of someone that had Sword of War and Peace on an Aurelia, and they're like, target Aurelia with her abilities. Is like, no,
you cannot do that.
You cannot do that.
I love sort of Sinew and Steel here. It does really great work for your deck.
That card is very good.
Yep.
Gets +2/+2. Oh, sorry.
A Sinew and Steel gives +2/+2 protection from red and black. And then when the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you throw it up to 1 target Planeswalker and up to 1 target artifact. This is the only ability that's super relevant on the swords that I play, because it makes it so you can pressure life totals while dealing with Planeswalkers, which is something that aggro decks traditionally have problems with.
Yeah.
And then the last...
That artifact removal is just really good, too.
Oh, yeah. The last category I want to talk about for this deck is Protection Suite, which some people are like, you're playing mono green. What are you playing for protection to stop at instant speed spot removal? Well, there's 4 main ones I'm playing that act as counter spells in this deck. There are Blossoming Defense, which is for a single green an instant that gets +2/+2 and hexproof until end of turn. Heroic Intervention, which is 1 and a green and gives you and all permanents you control indestructible and hexproof. Right? Is it you and all permanents, or is it just you? I don't have the card.
It's you, or it's permanents you control, not you.
Okay, so it gives all your permanents.
Giving yourself indestructible is kind of funny.
Well, I was thinking
I can never die.
Where it included everything.
Yeah.
And then Veil of Summer, which is the best card in M20.
Probably.
This is a block of text that stops you from being hit by blue or black stuff.
Hey, what are you talking about?
Creature uncounterable.
This one gives you and permanents you control hexproof.
That's the point.
And then the last card I want in this suite is my favorite card in this suite. Vines of Vastwood, which is a single green for an instant with kicker for a green. You give target creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. If it was kicked, it gets +4/+4 as well. The best part about this card is that it can be used to stop equipments being tashed. Auras, Planeswalker abilities are targeting a creature. You can target any creature your opponent is controlling, and if they are targeting it, the spell fizzles. It acts as it essentially acts as a dispel for any target, which is an extremely relevant thing. And sometimes just giving +4/+4 to an attacking creature is enough just to get there.
Yeah.
You only have to blow someone out with this card 1 time, and then they'll play around it for the rest of their existence.
Yep. It's a good card.
That's Goreclaw.
Yeah.
I like it. I like that deck a lot. It's cool.
Yeah. This deck is a really cool deck.
Yeah.
It goes against everything I like about Magic, but I think it's cool.
Well,
yeah,
who wants to go next?
I can go next if you want.
Sure.
So my deck is definitely my pet deck, and it's a Child of Alara deck, but it's a Child of Alara deck I'm pretty sure almost anyone hasn't really seen. So Child of Alara is Wooburg, 1 of each color, and it's a 6/6 legendary avatar with trample, And when Child of Alara is put into a graveyard from play, destroy all non-land permanents. They can't be regenerated. My deck is actually my attempts of making a Pauper EDH deck, besides the Commander, being all commons. And this deck is just a value engine through and through, and I'm really happy with this. I built it originally because one of my friends told me that you had to spend a lot of money to be really good at Commander, and I said that's not true. And then I decided to put a budget restriction, and then I said, no, you know what? I'm just going to do a common restriction. And I had started with a couple different decks, and then I tried with Tassiger for a little bit, doing a Freed from the Wheel combo. I tried a bunch of different things, and then I eventually settled on just sticking with things that had been banned from Pauper, the Peregrine Drake combos. And so this deck, it basically has 2 win conditions. 1, beating someone in the face with Child of Alara till they die, and it actually happens more than you'd think.
It does have trample.
It does have trample, and when it dies, you wipe the board for all non-land permanents.
Say it with me, class. Why does it have trample?
Yeah. It's a big boy.
It's a big boy. It's really easy to cast. But this entire deck is using commons to. It's got a bunch of transmute abilities. It's running almost all the transmute spells. It's running a Brain Spoil, which is 5 mana, 2 black, 3 colorless, destroy target creature, can't be regenerated, transmute for 2 black and 1 to go get Peregrine Drakes. You're running multiple copies of that. Also, you're running a backup win con with Cloud of Fairies because you're running most of the bounce lands that tap for 2. So like Simic Growth Chamber, or is it Boiler Works that return a land to your hand and then it taps for 2 mana. If you have 2 of those out with Cloud of Fairies, you also get to go off of the combo. I guess I should describe the combo. The combo is Peregrine Drake, Peregrine Drake is a 5 mana, 1 blue, 4 colorless. When it enters the battlefield, untap up to 5 lands, and it's a flying 2/3. You combine that with a card similar to Archaeomancer. When Archaeomancer, it's a 2 blue, 2 colorless, but there's a couple of different cards that do this exact same function. When Archaeomancer enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. And then you can either play Ghostly Flicker, or Displace. They do the same thing essentially for this deck. And Ghostly Flicker is a 3 mana instant, 1 blue, 2 colorless. Exile 2 artifacts, creatures, and/or lands you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. So basically, you cast Ghostly Flicker targeting your Archaeomancer or similar effect, and your Peregrine Drake, and it will bounce them, and you net basically 2 mana every single time because you get Ghostly Flicker back with their Archaeomancer, your Peregrine Drake lands, and up to 5 lands, so you generate infinite mana. This deck is running Capsize, personal favorite card of mine, to be an infinite mana dump and also just really good removal, as well as Rolling Thunder as another way to deal infinite damage to the table. Everything else about it is like it's a reanimation deck, it's a transmute deck. I run a lot of single target removal because it serves 2 purposes. 1, destroy annoying creatures that are stopping me from comboing off, and 2, there are ways to kill Child of Alara. So like I run Angelic Purge. It's a 3 mana, 1 white, 2 colorless. As an additional cost to cast Angelic Purge, sacrifice a permanent, and then exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment. Actually, most of my spells that can sacrifice something or do something with sacrifice use, as an additional cost, sacrifice a creature for this spell, and that works really great because it means that people can't stop me from sacrificing Child of Alara even if they counterspell up.
My favorite card in this category of this deck is a card you've targeted me way too much with, and that's Mind Extraction.
Oh yes, my God, I was going to talk about that one. Mind Extraction is a fantastic card in a 5-color deck like this where I want to sacrifice Child of Alara a lot. It's 3 mana, 1 black, 2 colorless. As an additional cost, sacrifice a creature, and then target player reveals his or her hand and discards all cards of each of the sacrificed creature's colors from it. Child of Alara is 5 colors, so I usually get to wipe out the control player or the combo player if I know they're running really color intensive or whatever. I basically get to say discard your entire hand, and I'm going to wipe the board. It's a very, very rude card. I have hit Alex with it way too many times.
This, I believe this deck is... I don't see... Oh, no, you added it. Okay. I was looking for Village Rights.
Yeah, Village Rights. I do try and keep this updated with. I keep it Pauper. There's a lot of ways to go forth with this deck. A lot of people have said to add Maze's End and the Gates combo. That's the traditional thing you see in Travelara, but I try and keep it pure Pauper. So
You don't
it's
need
really
that.
fun though. I really like this. I have a lot of sacrifice effects, and then I have a lot of ways to bring back cards either to my hand or to the battlefield. And then I use a lot of those effects. I'm trying to find one of my favorite ones that I get to use is Reaping the Graves. Probably not a highly played card. It is 3 mana again, 1 black, 2 colorless. Return target creature from your graveyard to your hand, and then it has Storm, which is amazing when you cast 3 or 4 cards in a turn, and it's an instant. So if your opponent is playing a bunch of cards in a turn, I just go, "Thank you very much. I would like all the creatures back in my hand."
It's something.
It's really. I encourage you to look through this. I talked through most of the cards I really want to talk to with this deck. Most of the creatures are either repeat effects of Archaeomancer, transmute abilities, or tutors. So I have like Vidalcan Aether Mage, which has 3 mana wizard cycling. Discard this card, find a wizard, and Archaeomancer is a wizard. So I use it for that. And then I have like Wretched Griff, 7 mana Eldrazi that has a merge for 5 and a blue, and when you cast Wretched Griffith, draw a card. I get to emerge that onto Child of Alara. It's another like sacrifice when casting ability, and I get to wipe the board, get left with a 3/4, and draw a card, and it's just really great. On top of that, it runs a couple of protection spells, counterspell, rewind. I run Fairy Trickery, which is another counterspell, 3 mana counterspell for non-fairy spells.
And exiles.
Yeah, and exiles it too, which is pretty relevant. And then I even run Red Elemental Blast, 1 red, counter target blue spell or destroy target blue permanent. This is great in counter wars when I'm trying to resolve something. It also kills Child of Alara. So I've used that quite a bit as well. Outside of that, it's got a bunch of ramp spells, and then it's just got a ton of different ways to return cards from my graveyard to my hand or onto the battlefield itself. And it runs really well. I think they've all played against this deck quite a bit. It's definitely one of my favorites. For a 5-color deck with only commons, it actually hits all 5. It makes it land drops pretty consistently because it runs a lot of different ramp type effects and filters and such like that. I even put in a Trinket Mage, which 3 mana, 1 blue, 2 colorless. When Trinket Mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with CMC 1 or less, reveal it, and put it into your hand. And I run all of the artifact lands. So I even run ways to tutor specific colors. It can also get other things, Nihil Spellbomb or Expedition Map, so I can go find something like a Bajuka Bog or something like that. So I try to put every single card in here has more than one reason to be in here. They have multiple purposes. And even if my win con is unavailable or I can't go off, I have won several times with just bashing people in with Child of Alara as a 6/6. That is the alternate win condition, and it works pretty dang well. I really enjoy playing this deck. I think Alex has called it the big brain deck because it's really annoying because you have to like figure out how to transmute lines.
It's a mental exercise.
There's a lot of lines.
Yeah.
And there is one thing about this deck that does frustrate me a little bit, Jason, is that you have spent all this time getting together this deck that only has commons for it, and then you're playing the uncommon printings for a bunch of cards.
Some of the printings I have are uncommon printings, and I apologize if you look at it.
You have to get a Tempest Rolling Thunder by now, Jesus.
Good old Rolling Thunder.
Everything has a common printing, I should say. If you are looking at the deck list and see it's an uncommon, I promise, as a common printing somewhere. But this deck is really fun. Its budget, it's like $65.
It's about $65 on TCG Player,
Yeah, as of right now. And honestly, almost all of that's Child of Alara is the biggest price card at $7. Everything else besides Merchant Scroll is under $5. It's it's a pretty cheap deck to build. It's really fun. There's a lot of different things you can add to it. I constantly actually update this and change cards around that I like or I don't like or something like that. But it runs a lot of removal, runs a lot of counter spells. Its commander in itself is a board wipe. I actually let Chart of Lara go to the graveyard a ton, just because I can reanimate it the next turn or get it back or something like that.
One thing that I think is important to talk about this deck is this deck was built and designed before the commander rule was changed that allowed it, so its ability would trigger anyways.
Yeah. You can definitely...
it has to go to the graveyard for its ability to resolve.
No. I thought this was when it died.
No.
Oh, did they change that?
It's just when it dies, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it says on the original printing, go to graveyard from play.
Right.
No, I understand.
But yeah, this is a really fun deck. I really like it a lot. It is a bit of a mental exercise at times, but like I said, mostly every single card in here has at least more than one function, or it can be used. I use Capsize a lot to just bounce stuff back to people's hand and getting Capsize. For those of you who are unaware, is one of my favorite cards as well, and it's 3 mana, 2 blue, and a colorless, and it's got buyback 3, and you return target permanent to its owner's hand. So it's any permanent, not just non-land, so you can just bounce people's lands back or their creatures or something else if you have a ton of mana, which this deck tends to do. And then it serves as a secondary win con because you make infinite mana and then you just bounce everyone's entire board state and you have a 6/6 on the field and you win. You win from there.
Winning.
I will say this is a deck that doesn't use Soul Ring. It only runs 1 mana rock, and that is Darksteel Ingot, because Darksteel Ingot is indestructible. There's no reason to run Soul Ring.
Can
Your
you
commanders...
run Soul Ring?
What?
No.
I don't think you can run Soul
Ring.
Ring.
Common.
Oh, yeah, you can't even run Soul Ring for Pauper reasons. But I only run 1 mana rock in here, too, Darksteel Ingot. But it still ramps pretty hard. You're running like Steve. You're running a bunch of different ways to ramp into it. It's got a lot of interaction. It's really fun. I encourage you to look at it. It's really cheap. I think it's the cheapest deck on the list, unless I'm wrong.
Alex's is definitely the most expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the cheapest list that we're posting out today, but it's really cool. It's really fun, and you can build it with commons, and there's a lot of different ways to switch this deck around and stuff like that. I'm really proud of it, and I absolutely love playing it. So yeah.
You thought mono green was cheap? No way. Not when you put Mox Diamond and Jewel Lotus in your deck.
Oh, also, real quick, I have played this at CDH pods before, and if a lot of other people are playing like a lot of interaction, it turns out this just really destroys them for the simple reason that CDH has a hard time keeping up with a constant reoccurring board wipe.
Yep.
I've played this at a little bit more higher end tables. It can keep up with really good decks as long as they're not like turn 3, turn 4 combos and no one else is running interaction. So it's actually very powerful for the fact that it's all commons and very cheap.
Well, it's very good in the heavy blue metas, not the fast metas that you see.
Yeah. If you're running a ton of fast decks, it falls behind because it does take you till about turn 4, turn 5 at least to hit Child of Alara, and sometimes that isn't your first play. But yeah, it's got a bunch of draw, ramp, interaction. It's super, super fun, and I really love playing this deck.
Yeah, it's a cool deck. I've played against it a lot. I love it.
Yep.
I don't necessarily love what Child of Alara does to me, but...
Child of Alara can make a lot of people cry really fast. So,
Yeah, but it's fun, and I love telling people when I first sit down with new people, like, can you guess the gimmick? And I've had a few people guess Pauper or all commons, but for the most part, they're like, I don't know what you're doing, and it's like it's a Pauper deck, and I absolutely love playing this. So yeah,
it's fun. I like it. Well, why don't we jump over to another 5-color deck?
Oh wait, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I can go. You want to end it?
I thought it'd be nice for me to go next because we've talked about aggro and combo, and now we can talk about control
before we get to
another combo deck.
Garbage. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so my deck, everyone else had really organized decks. Mine is not organized. I want to tell you right now, this deck is just a bunch of cards I like, but they are really strong Magic cards. So my commander is Kenrith the Returned King, and for those who don't know what this card does, it's 4 and a white. For a legendary creature, human noble, 5/5, with, I'm sure everyone knows what this is, but he has 5 activated abilities. The first one is for 1 red, all creatures gain trample and haste until end of turn. For 1 and a green, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. For 2 and a white, target player gains 5 life. For 3 and a blue, target player draws a card. And 4 and a black, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under its owner's control. You can do that for anyone, by the way. That's a symmetrical effect. I've seen a lot of people build this as like a group hug deck. That's wrong. Don't play it like that. Play it like this. So, I guess I'll just talk about some of the things I like about the deck, because there's not really a theme. It's a control deck, so you're going to run... I guess we can talk about like the removal and the wraths and stuff. So you're running all sorts of great... Some of the best removal, because obviously you're in all 5 colors, so you got to use all the best removal that the game has to offer, like Anguished Unmaking, Assassin's Trophy, Beast Within, Generous Gift, Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, just things to keep your opponent from like playing problematic permanents. You also get to play on the stack quite a bit with uncounterable counterspells like Dovin's Veto and Counterflux, which are really good magic spells.
Weird.
That make people very angry when they say, in response, oh no, that can't be countered.
Weird.
Weird how that works,
Counterflux also
right?
can hit random storm effects if you're ever playing against Storm.
We
great.
may or may not
Overload it.
talk about those exact 2 cards again when we get to mine.
Counterflux and Dovin's Veto are strong magic cards.
Yeah.
Yep.
It also,
really good.
other counterspells, it plays Void Shatter, Tail's End, Syncopate, just good overall counterspells. Void Shatter and Syncopate are 2 of my favorites because they exile.
First
Which-
off, you don't play Syncopate.
Well, right now it's a regrowth, but it intends to be a Syncopate. Tail's End is just really good, underplayed in Commander, honestly. I think a lot of people don't play it because it's kind of a mean card. Just countering someone's Commander for 2 mana feels pretty good. There's
No,
one
I
more
think-
counterspell in the deck, but I'm going to talk about that when I get to some of the
I think the reason
like,
you don't
synergies.
see it a lot is because people are like, why would I want to play this or they think it's a super unflexible thing because it can only counter legendary spells.
Legendary
The
spell.
The only spells they can counter are legendary, and that's
Yeah,
that's
but
the thing they
think about
focus
that.
on.
Weird.
Think
I know,
about how
but
many legendary
commanders.
spells there are.
They're
All
focusing on that
planeswalkers.
and not how flexible of a card it actually is.
Yeah, the fact that it
Umezawa's
gets
Jite gets
Stifle.
countered by
Yeah.
this card.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
sure
it
does.
Yep, that's
Sure does.
sure does.
Yeah, so you're obviously also playing, like, so this deck is mainly based Bant. I didn't really mention that at the beginning. It's 5 color, but it's mainly Bant. Mainly because I'm a filthy casual and I like playing Bant in Commander.
Yeah, at least he's
so,
honest.
you're obviously playing quite a bit of Ramp, Cultivate, Farseek, Rampant Growth, cards like that. We're not really going to go into them. And you're using, cheap cantrips to like sculpt your hand, like Ponder, Preordain, Brainstorm. Brainstorm obviously has a bit more utility. We'll talk about that in a second. And you're playing a lot of Ravs. And Supreme Verdict is a really good one if you're playing against anyone that's playing like blue creatures. Winds of Abandon is a back-breaking magic card that people should put in every white deck.
It's a really good card.
Disgusting magic card.
That card always hits me in waves because like you're always just like, well, I have this card. You cast Winds of Abandon, and then I sit there and go, ugh. And then it like hits a second time where I'm like, I'm gonna lose everything, and then I get a little bit of happiness because I'm like,
Because you get lands.
no, I get a little bit of happiness because I'm like, oh, it doesn't. It only hits creatures. I always think that it hits all non-land permanents.
Oh my god, if it hit everything. So, for the
I-
people at home, I definitely want to talk about Winds of Abandon because I think it's a great card.
The card's
It's
really
1 and a
good.
white for a sorcery. Exile target creature you don't control. For each creature exiled this way, its controller searches their library for a basic land. Those players put those cards on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their libraries. Overload for white. So, it is an
Yeah.
asymmetrical board wipe that exiles.
But if you really need it in the early game or your mana
Yeah,
strapped,
it can be
you
a
at least hit
removal
the
spell in the
target,
early
so-
game.
Yeah, it's a really, really good card. I love this card.
You play just plain old Wrath of God as well. The two like actual so this deck I tend like its actual name is the Danger Zone because of a stupid pun with Kenrith and Kenny Loggins and all that stuff. But I like to call it like the Backbreaker because it plays some not very nice magic cards like Tragic Arrogance and Mythos of Snapdax.
Oh yeah, because those are the mean cards, not top balance.
Oh, we're not talking about that yet. We're not there yet. We're not to that part. Tragic Arrogance and Mythos of Snapdax do about the same thing, so I'll talk about Tragic Arrogance. For 3 white, It's a sorcery. For each player, you choose from among them permanents they control, an artifact, creature, enchantment, planeswalker. They sacrifice the rest. So they get to keep one of each type. So if you're playing, if like for some reason you ever play against me in this deck, don't play artifact creatures because you're going to be real sad. Because you can just pick them both for artifact and creature, and they just lose everything else. It's really good. So I've talked about the controlling elements. I'm going to talk about how you actually win with this deck, because right now I've only talked about like just controlling the board. Kenrith can win by himself. He just make him huge, trample over. He's a 5/5 already, so he's big boy. He's thick lad. But there's a few like win conditions I'd like to point out. The first being Elspeth Sun's Champion, standard All-Star Elspeth Sun's Champion.
Used to be Modern All-Star.
Modern All-Star
What are you
Elspeth Sun's
talking about?
Champion. Alex still
Modern
plays it.
All-Star.
Alex still plays it. Yeah. Honestly, if the control players would just get off of Stoneblade, we could play Elspeth again. But we're not talking about that. Elspeth Sun's Champion is 4 white for 4 loyalty planeswalker. As a +1, put 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens on the battlefield. A -3, destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. And her -7, which is the one you want to get to, you get an emblem with creatures you control get +2/+2 and have flying. She's really good.
Oh no, now your Nightveil Spectre will have flying.
Oh yeah, Nightveil Spectre. No. But Elspeth is she just makes a bunch of tokens. She's really hard to deal with because she just makes an army, like, you know, tons of, unless they have tramplers, and then even if they're big tramplers, her -3 mops them up, and then you just make tokens up to her ultimate. It's really funny. I mean, she's my favorite planeswalker card, so she went in the deck, and she turned out to be pretty good, so she stayed in the deck. One other win condition I'd like to talk about is Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. 4 red, white. This deck needs a lot of mana, so that's why there's a bunch of ramp. For a 5/5 flying first strike angel, if a source would deal damage to an opponent or permanent opponent controls, it deals double that damage instead. And if a source would deal damage to you or permanent you control, prevent half that damage rounded up. This card makes Walking Ballista worthless. Any sort of pings for 1 are worthless against this card because it makes it go to 0. If anyone's trying to like, I believe it also makes like Grape Shot worthless because that deals 1 damage, doesn't it? Yep. So obviously Tendrils will still kill you because that's loss of life. This card I kind of added to the deck on a whim because I was like, this is a big flyer that does a lot of damage. She blocks as a 10/5 with first strike, so that's gonna kill everything. She's just pretty good. She's also really good for political, because you can be like, here's Gisela, fight each other, deal double damage. It's great. I love it. There's a couple other cards. Intet the Dreamer is really cool. Samut, Voice of Dissent's cool. But we don't have enough time to talk about all those. Oh, Nightveil Spectre, which we talked about last episode, is in this deck. You guys all know what that does. Steal stuff from your opponent. Really funny if they toot or anything. There are a few other ways to win. There's a really obvious one in the form of Saheeli Rai and Felidar Guardian. Basically, that's just in there because sometimes you just gotta have an I win button in a deck like this. So you draw a lot of cards.
Yeah.
You draw a lot of cards because this deck also plays Pull from Tomorrow, and Sphinx's Revelation is massive card draw spells. Also, Kenrith himself draws you cards. And there's a few other like locks you can put your opponent under. One of my favorites is either Eternal Witness or Archaeomancer with Sublime Epiphany. Where Sublime Epiphany, Super Cryptic Command as it was called, 4 blue, choose 1 or more, counter target spell, counter target activated or triggered ability, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and target player draws a card. So, what you can do with this, with Eternal Witness or Archaeomancer, is cast it, do all the stuff, make a token of Archaeomancer or Eternal Witness, get it back. So basically, if you have like Wilderness Wreck out or just have a ton of mana, you can especially if you get down to a 1v1, basically lock your opponent out of the game. It's expensive. It's 6 mana each time, but it's very powerful spell. And then one more thing I want to talk about is Sensei's Divining Top. This deck runs... It's got a really simple mana base. It's just a bunch of fetch lands, 5-color lands, shock lands. Because I didn't want to splurge on dual lands because it's expensive. But top is really good for just looking at the top of your deck. It combos really well with Tameo, Collector of Tales, who's also in this deck. But Sensei's Divining Top turns out is really good with a simple little card called Counterbalance. If any of you ever
Legacy
played,
All-Star.
if you've ever played Legacy in the
players
last
are
4
shaking in their
years,
boots right now.
you guys remember this one. For blue, whenever an opponent plays a spell, you reveal the top card of your library. If you do, counter that spell if it has the same CMC as the revealed card. So this card is actually the only way you can save your Sensei's Divining Top from a Crossing Grip, because if you leave a 3 on top of your library, the trigger still happens. So you still flip a card, and if it's a 3, it does counter Crossing Grip. Is it the only way? There might be another way. I guess, like, if it's the first spell they cast and you ultimate a Jace, but I don't know why they would do that. But it's pretty much the only way to save Sensei's Divining Top if someone
At
decides
least
to
in
Crossing
this
Grip.
deck, there's a few.
It's the easiest way. Like,
It's probably the easiest way, yeah.
there are
Your-
one or two
your
ways to
ability
counter something.
To
but...
stop. Yeah, it has to be a triggered ability.
It has to be a
counter
trigger.
spells.
Yeah.
To create
Oh,
a
and
Or
then-
like
know your
Perplexing
location.
Chimera.
Perplexing
Yeah.
You
Chimera
can
would do
gain
it,
control
yeah.
of it and swap it. Yeah.
And then you do fun things with top. I mean, fun for you, not necessarily your opponents.
Top and Counterbalance is, and you have like a
It
ton
even
of
plays.
CMCs.
You even play Treat the Angels. We're just playing Legacy.
Yeah,
Caleb,
you have a
want to
ton
talk
of
about
different
the
CMCs. So
first time
that
top was
Counterbalance
played
is
in
good.
this deck?
Oh, okay, yeah. So a preface for this deck is it used to be a budget deck. It no longer is. It's like almost $1,000.
And this is a special kind of budget that we're gonna do an entire episode on eventually.
So this used to be a budget deck. A special, as Allison said, a special kind of budget deck we'll talk about later for a specific kind of playing Commander format thing. But Alex was playing the deck, and Night Veil Spectre has been a part of this deck since very near the beginning. I think back when the Commander was Golos, it was playing Night Veil Spectre because I think Jason suggested it. I was like, oh yeah, that'd be funny. So I put it in the deck, and
I think I had a foil in my trade
Yeah,
binder. And I
I
was
still
like,
have
you should
that
play
foil.
this, and you were like, yes.
I still have that foil. It's been signed twice.
Yep.
And Alex was playing the deck, and he attacked someone with it and stole their Sensei's Divining Top, and proceeded to you won, right? You just stomped him.
Yeah.
This deck, it was a lot
Essentially
more.
What happened is I sat there and did the top thing where you sit there and your control deck with top, so you're ahead of everyone else.
Yeah.
And
The
then
deck
there's
used to
one point where
win.
they tried to, or there was like a wrath for artifact or something was played that was going to destroy top. I was like, whatever. Flip top, draw a card, move to my
Attack.
turn, attack, steal top again.
It's mine. Yeah. This deck used to rely more heavily on the it used to have a Peregrine's Ray combo in it, so it relied more heavily on that combo. So having top in that was insane. It's still insane. It's one of my favorite cards, so long live Senpai's Holy Blade. And that's the deck. It's just a bunch of garbage I threw together, and I like it. That's all. It is the truest essence of Commander, I think. Where it's just like, this is a bunch of cards I
silly
like.
spells. Yeah. Ugh.
It's really funny. All right, let's start this one off. So, this deck also used to be the same type of like budget format that Kalen was talking about, and I wanted to do something really, really unique, and because that's just what I do when I build Commander, and I built probably my favorite card in the last. When did Birthing Pod come out? So, like, since Birthing Pod came out...
Or no, Mirrodin? Scars
it was
Abandoned?
New Phyrexia, that's 2011?
New Phyrexia.
2012? No, it's like
2012?
2011.
Yeah.
It's something around there.
Early 2010s.
So about 10 years. The past 10 years, ever since New Phyrexia came out, this is probably my favorite card. It's Niv Mizzet Reborn. I love this card so much. So basically, best breakdown of it, giant dragon avatar, costs 1 of each color. He's got flying, and he's a 6/6. So a 5-mana flying 6/6, already pretty powerful. When he ETBs, you reveal the top 10 cards of your library, and you get 1 card from each color pair from among them into your hand. So you get, one Azorius, 1 Dimir, 1 Rakdos, 1 Gruul, 1 Celestia, 1 Boros, Izzet, Simic, Golgari, and Orzhov card. I've only ever hit 10 cards once. On Arena by accident. So it's the only time I've ever done it, but it was really fun. And it's a lot of the time it's just a giant 6/6 flying idiot that ETBs and draws you somewhere between 3 to 6 cards, which is insane. And this deck is very kind of split between all of its different color pairs so that it can make it work really well. But I wanted this deck to be very unique, and so I was trying to look through a bunch of different things. I was trying to do like just weird like value cards, and then I was trying to do like a weird control deck, and eventually I settled on where it started off in this budget deck. And for those of you who want to see the budget version, I still have that list on my Tapped Out. So when I post my link to my deck, it's also going to have the budget version in case you want to build it, because it's only like
I didn't save my budget version. I just got rid of it.
No, it's totally fine. I saved it, and so if you want to build it, because it's only like $150, it's really, really good for a budget deck. But the new version obviously is a lot more than that. It's about $1,000. And that also includes like the cost of my foils and stuff too, so it's a bit different. But anyway, the basic way that this deck works is that it's sort of it's a mixture between like a mid-range value-based deck, a like slight like control strategy, and then this extremely hyper resilient creature combo deck, where all the cards that are parts of the combo are 2 colors. And so the way that the combo works is there's a bunch of different ways, and I'm not going to go into them, but you need 3 different types of creatures. You need 1 of each. So one of them is a counter. I call them the counter addition subtraction creatures. So things like Grumgully the Generous, Juniper Order Ranger, Malira Sylvic Outcast, Rhythm of the Wild, or Master Biomancer. And basically the only thing you need to know about these cards is that they put a +1/+1 counter or more than +1/+1 counters on a creature that enter the battlefield. And so then you have sack outlets. So the 3 that I play are Cartel Aristocrat, Falconwrath Aristocrat, and Viral's the Scar Striped. They just sacrifice creatures for free. That's all that matters about these cards. And then persist creatures. So I have Kitchen Finks, Murderous Redcap, and Safehold Elite. So the way that this combo works is just like the Malira Pod combo from old Modern a long time ago. Basically, you assemble those 3 pieces. You can gain infinite life by sacrificing Kitchen Finks. It then persists with a +1/+1 counter on it, so that the -1/-1 counter is canceled, and then it can persist again. And you do that infinite number of times. So with Kitchen Finks, you gain infinite life. With Murderous Redcap, you deal infinite damage. Safehold Elite is just a way to do the combo, because there are also a 4th piece of the combo, which is your like ETB/death triggers. So things like Corpse Knight, Judith the Scourge Diva, and Mayhem Devil. So they basically just say whenever a permanent dies or comes into play, you deal damage to your opponent. And that's really basically where the combo comes from. Now there are other combos in the deck. Very specifically, there's a Safi Eriksdotter plus Renegade Rallier. So Renegade Rallier is just a 3/2 1 green-white human that when it ETBs, if you have Revolt, you get to reanimate a permanent with CMC 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And Safi is a green and a white human that's a 2/2 that you can sacrifice to choose another creature. And then when that creature dies, it immediately comes back to the battlefield. So you have both of them in play. You sacrifice Safi targeting Renegade Rallier. You use a sacrifice outlet to sacrifice Renegade Rallier. Safi's trigger happens. Renegade comes back. Revolt has happened because both Safi and the Renegade Rallier left. Safi comes back. You can do that an infinite number of times, and if you have a thing like a Mayhem Devil or a Judith or a Corpse Knight, you win the game as well. So that it's a very like I said, a very resilient, hyper resilient creature-based combo deck.
Yeah.
It is definitely like the death of Kaelin as a control play. Like it's so hard to beat because there's a lot of just dumb resiliency. In
About
the
the
creatures that it
only
plays.
way to wrath your board effectively is
Is
with
to-
Tragic Arrogance, and then you just sacrifice Gerard, and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, so that's a card I
You're
actually
also
wanted
running
to
a
bring
couple
up
counter
because-
spells too, so you can even protect your board a lot.
Yep.
Like this is a great deck.
There's a lot of good counter spells, things like Absorb and then obviously Counterflux and Dovin's Veto, just very, very powerful. There's a couple others as well, but I'm not really going to go into all of those things. There's a little bit of ramp and a little bit of just I think there's 2 board wipes overall, and then a creature-based board wipe as well.
Last one standing.
Last
one. Yeah, I was just
Last
looking at
one
that.
standing. Okay, so I'll talk about this one. Last one standing is a card that you should be playing a heck of a lot more of. This card is not worth anything. It is $2 on TCG Mid right now. It is 1 black-red sorcery. Choose a creature at random. Destroy everything else. It's 3 mana Wrath that doesn't like keep your lands tapped like Bantu's Last Reckoning. It doesn't do anything like that. The reason I played it in this deck, obviously, it's 2 colors. It's a cheap, very very cheap Wrath. It's also cheap cost-wise, which when the deck was originally the budget version, it obviously needed more ways like that. And now it also plays things like Supreme Verdict, which are above the budget restriction that I had on the deck. And Supreme Verdict obviously is just a really good Wrath effect as well.
Oh yeah.
But a couple of the cards I wanted to talk about that are outside of the combo are just the sort of value pieces. So the main one that you had mentioned is Gerard, Weatherlight Hero. This card is, honestly, I don't know why this card wasn't in the original version of the deck, but like this card is so good. He's 2 red-white for a legendary human soldier with first strike. That's irrelevant, basically. But when he dies, you exile it and return to the battlefield all artifacts and creatures that were put into your graveyard this turn from the battlefield. So when someone wraths your board, Gerard just has a trigger, exile him, bring everything back. And that can just be really, really powerful if you've got a combo in play, but you need to like untap, say with, a birthing pod type effect like Prime Speaker Vanifar, or you need like a tap effect. I guess there's quite a few things that could matter, like Fiend Artisan or whatever. It also just lets you get all the value ETBs out of them. You get to reset their +1/+1 or -1/-1 counters in the term of like persist creatures, stuff like that. And so that's a very relevant one. Another one that we talked about quite a bit last week actually, because we were talking about I keep calling her Azula, but not Azula, Yuriko. But we talked about Fallen Shinobi. And so I'm not going to really go heavily into like what this card does. It just lets you cast a bunch of cards. The main thing that it does in this deck is that you attack with your 6/6 flying commander, and then you put this into play after it, the blocks have not been declared because he's flying over your opponent's creatures, and then you hit them, cast 2 spells for free. Oh, and you have a Niv Mizzet back in your hand that you can then cast and get his ETB effect again. So there's a lot of really, really powerful pieces to this deck. It's very, very resilient. I love this deck. I've put my heart and soul into this thing, and I've done a lot of work to it. And in fact, I'm actually currently in the process of writing the primer for it. I think this deck is something that I know the ins and outs of very, very well. It's not a very easy deck to pilot for any means. It's really hard to like sit down and be like, I know exactly what I need to do, exactly what card I need to get, etc. But I am writing a primer on it, so that'll be on the Tapped Out account eventually. So if you want to check that out sometime in the future, it should be there. And then real quick before I just kind of move past this deck and kind of move on before if anyone else has comments on it or whatever, I wanted to talk about one land in the deck because there are 11 non-multicolored cards. You get to play Pillar of the Parans, which is just just chef's kiss land. It's a land that tests for any color of mana, comes in untapped just like a command tower, except it only works for multicolored spells. And it turns out when you have 52 of them in your deck, it's pretty useful. So
yeah, it's pretty good.
It's a good one. Yeah, and if you guys have comments, this is your time to shoot them at me.
I hate this deck.
I love this deck. I played against it.
Why do you hate it, Colin?
I love this deck.
I love it.
Deck.
It's really obnoxious to play against, as he says. Niv Mizzet's just such a value piece.
That's the
It's
one thing is that like you can sit there and fight me on the combo side of things so long. You can be like, all right, exile all of these effects, get rid of that creature that's gonna combo me, stop this, and then I'm just like, here's my 6/6 4 times. Oh look, you're dead.
Yeah.
Weird, right?
Yep. It
There
reminds
is
me a little
one-
bit of like
just-
my backup win con for Child of Alara is just slamming in
It's
with a
just attacking
6/6
with a
constantly.
6/6. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it works great. Yours is flying, Child of Alara is trample, but the point being is that like they're both massive beasts that
They're just
generally connect.
idiots. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and that's the
Yeah.
other thing too is that there's a lot of like creatures that are like that. Like we already mentioned Fallen Shinobi, but like Magister of Worth is the creature-based board wipe that I play that is also just a 4/4 flyer. Things like Soul Herder can get out of hand very quickly. Obviously, you
yeah.
have the Saheeli Rai cat combo, but you also play like Dragon Lord Dramoka, which is another way of like protecting your things when you're going off and stuff. But it's also just a house. Like that thing will just kill
Yeah.
your opponent really quickly. And that happens a lot. Like I've won the game by just attacking with like 2/2s for like 20 turns in a row.
Yeah.
So
There is one thing
Yeah.
about this list I'm a little sad, or it looks like it didn't turn out the way you wanted it, and that's that there's no Knight of New Alara in here.
yeah, so Knight of New
It's
Alara
a
is a
little
really
cute.
cool card. It's very cute. Yeah. It was in this deck for a while. It's still in the budget version. It's so it's 2 green white and it's a 2/2 that states that all of your other multicolored creatures get +1/+1 for each of their colors. So it makes Niv-Mizzet into an 11/11. It makes all your creatures get effectively +2/+2. And that's really, really good. But that was the problem is that all my cards are 2 color. So it was just a +2/+2 Lord effect versus being like, except on Niv, and that's just not, it's just not as good as I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
It's very
I'm
cute.
sorry, but a +2/+2 Lord effect is you're just like it just gets +2/+2.
Well, it's a 2/2 for 4 mana that pumps all my other creatures by +2/+2, which is like fine, but I'd rather play Mayhem Devil, which is what I added instead. So
That's fair.
'cause Mayhem Devil is really, really powerful. But yeah,
Yeah.
this deck's a ton of fun. I love it. I
love
won with it
Mayhem
last
Devil
night.
is I just
And,
Mayhem
Alex was
Devil
not
is
happy
whenever
about it.
a player sacrifices a permanent, and that's
Yeah,
that's
Whenever,
great.
so
Any
it
permanent
triggers
is-
on fetches.
Yeah, it triggers on fetch lands when your opponent cracks fetches. It triggers when your opponent like does any sort of sacrifice effects whatsoever. It also
actually stops
triggers
some
off of your
combos.
fetch lands. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Yeah, it stops.
Excuse me,
It
very,
stops
very
like
powerful.
the same type of combos that you're trying to do. You can actually kill that player first,
Yep.
probably.
And
That's
I love
great.
it
I
with
love
with things like when you cast like Neoform, obviously being a tutor effect, but like sacrificing the creature as part of a cost, just being able to like ping something down that's causing you
Yep.
problems is a big
Any
deal.
target is
So,
great. Any
Yep.
target is great. You
Yeah.
can ping down mana dorks. You can ping down, slow down the team. That is a great card. I love it. Fits in with this deck so well. It's
Yeah.
a really well sculpted deck. I love it.
And
That's right.
that's one thing about this deck is that if you're looking at this list probably like, I don't know, 2 months in the future for any reason, chances are pretty high that one of the cards that I talked about, not in the list anymore. I do a lot of tinkering with this deck, and the list that I'm going to be posting in the description is the one that I use it's going to be where the primer is. It's where I, put all of my heart, soul, and work into it. So the chances are high that you're going to see some changes over time, but it's a very, very powerful deck. I've beaten CDH decks with it. It mostly that comes down to the fact that people just don't expect you to just be like, oh look, turn 4, I win, and then you just do, because they're like, oh, you're a 5-color deck that isn't doing anything, and you cast an idiot on turn 2 that no one cares about. So, but it's
Then they die.
it can be a really powerful deck. Yeah, yeah. I mean that happened a couple times where I just like turn 1 Dork, turn 2 I play like a Kitchen Finks, and they're like, okay. And then I'm just like, turn 3 kill you, and they're like, oh wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, exactly. You should have paid attention. So, yeah. But it's a fun deck, and if you want to build the budget version, it's just as powerful, just like 2 turns slower, because the mana base is not a bunch of
Mana base
fetch
is
lands
worse.
and shock lands and stuff.
Yeah.
I just love
Yeah,
Niv
that-
Mizzet
I
as
was-
a commander.
Well, yeah, I love
It's-
Niv Mizzet too. I'm looking to get him my version of him altered. Because I've got a lot of effort into this deck. It was really funny when I switched from the budget version to the non-budget version that all but 5 of my changes were lands. I only changed 5 cards into non-lands when it switched over.
Yeah.
Which I think is really, really funny, because it was just like updating the mana base was like the biggest thing for non-budgeting. So yeah, But anyway, that's all my deck. I talked about it for far too long. So
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are our pet decks.
yeah, these are the decks
Sir,
we put a lot of effort into. It was funny that 3 of us picked 5-color decks, although I knew Kalen and I were going to. And I figured Alex wasn't going to talk about his 5-color deck because both of them, one of them is a CDH deck and the other one is not his originally. So
Yeah, no.
yeah. So I knew he was going to be talking about Goreclaw, but Jason was kind of up in the air. He was either going to be a mono red deck or a 5-color deck. So
Oh God. Oh no, I'm glad we didn't talk about that
As
one.
much as I want to talk about Duretti, I won't shut up because of KCI lines, and Clark Clan Ironworks is my favorite
Shut up.
card in all of Magic.
Jason could spend an entire episode just talking about KCI.
it's
Oh my
actually,
god, I love
it's
KCI.
It's like
actually
me and
really
Eternal
funny.
Witness.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's actually really funny
Yeah.
that I was like this deck is my heart and soul. I put a lot of effort into it. I love this deck, right? My favorite card is Birthing Pod, and it's not in this deck, even though the deck
You
is no
kinda
longer
have
budget.
Birthing Pod.
I have a
It's
prime.
kind of
yeah,
Birthing Pod.
I have Prime Speaker Vanifar, Neoform, and Fiend Artisan.
Yeah.
But yeah, Birthing Pod's only one color, unfortunately, so can't play it. And the new one's colorless and only works for certain tribes, and that doesn't work.
Oh yeah, we can talk about that one all
Yep.
day.
Yeah. But yeah,
The Modern Angel deck.
I don't think there's anything else that is there anything else people want to comment on before we get to the end here? I think this is kind
Oh.
of the wrap up.
Yeah.
So
I don't think so.
Not really. If you, like I said, if you like what you see, like, subscribe, and comment, and let us know which deck is your favorite or which one you might want to build
or
next.
you know what I would also say, if you don't like the decks, that's fine. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Hit that bell, smack that bell. So
Smash that bell.
It's
then
asking
tell
for
us-
it. Just hit it really hard. And make sure you subscribe and and all that stuff before you comment and tell us how our deck is awful. I really appreciate that a lot.
I can't wait
yeah.
for it.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going up on other platforms as well. Spotify and iTunes or iCloud or whatever it's called. I don't remember the podcast one.
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. We're also on Twitter, and I don't think we're on Instagram yet.
Not
so I
yet.
couldn't
We're
find
working on it.
But yeah, but we are on Twitter.
Pictures of KCI and
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just gonna be
I
in case
put-
you
I put Jason in charge of that, and that might have been a mistake.
it's just gonna be like pictures of KCI, like in like
yeah.
surrounded by
sacrifice
roses.
everything.
Yeah.
No,
But
I can't wait for
is-
like the professional photo shoot of KCI in different locations.
It's just him holding KCI in
Like
different
it looks like
poses.
his senior pictures for type thing.
It's like
Clark Clan Ironworks.
at the
I love
Grand
it.
Canyon in front of the
it's
Eiffel
just like holding
Tower.
the KCI. Oh man. Yeah, and all that stuff is going to be in the description. If you want to check out our previous episodes or any future episodes that come out, obviously make sure you hit that subscribe button. Go back and watch those things, and you can hear all of our beautiful voices and see all of our ugly mugs the whole time, and that's the best part about it. But I don't think there's anything else we need to say. So this has been Back to Basics. We talked about our pet decks today, and it was a lot of fun. Actually, I had a blast talking about all these decks.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
But we've all
yeah.
seen them so many times.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
I
we've
mean,
seen
we're
the ins
used
and
to
outs
them.
of all these decks. Like I think probably like 10 to 15 cards from each person's deck has been like suggested from one of the other people in this.
Yeah.
group. We've done that a
definitely.
lot
Yeah,
where we just like back and forth between those. So yeah. Anyway, that's it for us. We're gonna head out of here and see you guys later. Have a good one, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.